Today is pasta day. So today we're going to make pasta, and it's going to be a fresh pasta. You can use your dried pasta you can buy from the supermarket, or you can make your own pasta. Incentives for those guys who are going to be making their own pasta. For the pasta, you're going to need two main ingredients, eggs and your flour. The flour is going to be composed of, for one recipe, 400 grams of your all-purpose flour, your regular flour, and then 100 grams of semolina flour. Semolina flour is the type of flour that's very hard. It has a lot of gluten. Gluten is that protein or a duo of protein that gives the bread its shape. It gives dough its shape, and it gives crust on the bread, so it's gonna make your dough a bit more on the harder side. Since your pasta dough is hard, then you need something with a lot of that. First one on the list, you have your eggs. Eggs should always be washed. When we talk about eggs inside the kitchen, it's going to be your large eggs, 55 grams. You're gonna need 5 whole eggs and then 3 egg yolks. That means 55 grams minus the shell is going to be around 50-ish. And 5 eggs, 250, then 3 egg yolks around 50 grams. Then crack the eggs on the flat side, not on the corner of the bowl, not on the corner of the table, but on the flat surface of the table. That will prevent the yolk from breaking. Prevent, but not assure. So crack them on the flat side. Crack them on the bowl, one by one. 1 container for your eggs, 1 container for your cracked eggs, and 1 container for the shell. Separate. Do it again. Crack everything. Separating your egg yolks from your eggs. Clean hands. Always wash your hands beforehand. And then just scoop it out like so. Then again, separate container for the egg yolks. Do it again. One by one. Flours, you must sift them. That is to prevent the lumps from forming. So semolina flour, all-purpose flour on your strainer. Then just sift it. Take note or check if there are any mites or anything that you don't want on your pasta. This would be the perfect time to take them out. So that will ensure that everything is even. And then get a fork in the middle of your flour mixture. Just make a very rough well for your eggs to sit on. Then your eggs, just combine your whole eggs and your egg yolks. This would be the time you're gonna be introducing some color if you want to. Maybe some squid ink or some pureed parsley or even tomato paste if you want to make an orange pasta. This would be the perfect time to do it. Okay, beat the eggs, put them in the middle, and then slowly incorporate the flour using your fork. You can do this on the bench, but I find it much more easier if you do it in the bowl. So incorporate it like you're mixing cement, basically. Now once you reach this stage, this is called like a shaggy dough. You can use your hands again. Wash your hands before you do this, and then slowly incorporate the flour. If you weighed and measured your eggs and your flour, you're not gonna have a hard time. It may feel like there's not enough moisture on the dough, but that's the nature of the pasta dough. It's a bit more on the dry and hard side. And once you get all that flour in there, or most of it, you can transfer onto the bench. You don't really need a bench scraper for this. You can just use your hands, you can use your arm. You can call your dad if you need to. Don't have the weight to do it. But you want to knead the dough for at least 10 minutes, 10 to 12 minutes, to develop the gluten. We talked about gluten earlier, and gluten loves moisture and it loves a lot of heat. Means when you do a lot of motion, if you do a lot of friction in there, it's going to generate heat and it's going to develop your gluten. So, base of your palm onto the dough, And then your forefingers gripping the dough, and then you push. Use your weight and just do it again and again. You cannot use a KitchenAid for this or a mixer. It's too hard of a dough. It's too dry. So once you feel that it's no longer sticking, then you know that the dough is good. Okay. Your dough's ready when you need it for 12 minutes, I should say, not 12 hours, 12 minutes. Try to press it. If it bounces back, that means you're good. Now the next thing we do is we have to rest it. Like any type of dough that has a lot of gluten, you have to rest it so that it forms well when you shape it. It doesn't come back when you try to shape it. Form it into a nice rough ball, and then you're gonna place it onto a cling film, a bit of olive oil, just to prevent it from drying out. Just like 2 drops, that will do. Then just wrap it. You can put this in a tightly sealed container if you want to, if you don't have cling film. But since we have cling film here, then we use it. Set it aside for around 30 to an hour. 2 sauces today. First one, bolognese sauce. On your recipe, you have, I think the yield is 10. So if you're gonna be making half, just divide everything into 2, then you have 5 portions. But today we're gonna make a full portion. So we have your beef measured, your onions, carrots, and celery. This is your basic matignon mixture, but in Italian we call it sofrito. Then you have chopped garlic. You have a couple of herbs and spices. You have oregano. We're gonna put in some cinnamon, and I think bay leaf. We're gonna put in some bay leaf too. Tomato paste for color, and for the fat we're gonna use our canola oil. Okay, when your oil is hot, then you wanna put in your meat in batches, like 3 to 4 batches, because if you overcrowd the pan or the pot, it's not gonna sear very well. The moisture is just gonna come back. So be patient. You want the moisture to evaporate, and you wanna sear this very quick. So this is basically what you want. You just want some color onto the meat. A bit of browning will do. A lot of the moisture coming out. At this point, you can take it out and then just transfer that to another container and then just sear another batch of your meat if needed. Heavy pot. Okay. Then you do it again. Now that your meat is seared, now we can move on to our aromatics. Same as with any other stew, we go on with our matignon, onions, carrots, or you can say it's sofrito, and celery. That's your Italian flag right there. Give that a good stir. So you want about like half of the total mixture going to be meat, and then half would be veggies. In this case, it's about, let's say, 75-25%. And you want that fond at the bottom of the pan right there. That's gonna give you a lot of flavor. So doing your mise en place for this one would give you the benefit of practicing your knife skills, since everything is brunoise. Okay, once your vegetables are already like soft and translucent, you can add in your garlic. You can add in a bit of oil if you needed. Okay, that's beef tallow or beef fat. You don't want to burn the bottom of the pan, so you can just lower down the heat if you need to. So play around with the heat. Next, tomato paste. It needs more fat. Good thing we have a lot of it. Okay, tomato paste go in. Always, always, always roast the tomato paste. Imagine like a spoonful of tomato paste. That's like a kilo of tomatoes in 1 spoon. So you want to reduce that acidity by roasting the tomato paste. So Dedicate one portion of your pan just for tomato paste. You want it a bit more on the browner side. If you see the oil coming out of your tomato paste or mixing with the tomato paste, turning out into a bit more on the dark orange, almost red, then you're good to go. If you have yay texture, then, like any other stew, you want to deglaze with red wine. How much red wine? Well, that depends on you since you're going to reduce it anyway. But the purpose of the wine is to soften up the pan drippings, all that fond at the bottom of the pan. You want to soften that up using your wine or alcohol. Because flavors comes in different forms. Some of them are water-based, some of them are oil-based, and some of them are alcohol-based. So you sauteed in oil, then you deglaze with alcohol, then we're going to add in your water. Make sure you clean the bottom of the pan using your red wine. Then you reduce. That means lowering down the volume of your wine to about, let's say, 25% of the original volume. Mix everything in. Then you want to bring back. Meat goes in. Your seared meat. Okay. Then at this stage, you can add in a bit of flour. How much flour? Not too much, just to make sure that it's no longer shiny. That's the goal. That means your flour is already mixed with your fat, forming your roux. So when the mixture is no longer shiny, then that's the point where you no longer add flour. So it's going to thicken the sauce. It's going to give it some body. It's going to give it some texture. So if you see that your mixture is still shiny, like yay, then add more flour. You do not want to add a lot to start. Remember, when you're cooking, you can always add more at the end, but if you add a lot in the beginning, then it's nearly impossible to take them out, especially flour and salt. Okay, so that's what you want. When you have a bit of body in there, and that's good to go. Next, we're gonna add in some spices, 2 cinnamon sticks. You can always add just one if you want to, or you can just omit it if you want to. Bay leaves, and then oregano. I'm using dried oregano for this one. It's much better if you use fresh, but just to show you guys, if you're gonna be using dried oregano, then you're gonna be needing just 1/3 of the original requirement if you're gonna be using your fresh. Okay, increase heat, then give that a good stir. Remember to take out the cinnamon sticks and the bay leaf later when you assemble your lasagna. Add in your very beautiful chicken stock. You can use beef stock if you want to. How much? Just enough to cover the meat, like any other stew. And you set this aside until the meat is cooked and tender. Next sauce would be bechamel, one of your mother sauces. So for this one, you must have everything prepared and measured. For one recipe, I think you're gonna need 1.2 to 1 liter of milk, around 50 and 50 grams of unsalted butter, and all-purpose flour to make a roux. And then, in this case, we're gonna be needing what we call an onion piqué. It's your spiked onion. That's half an onion. And then with a bay leaf and some cloves to secure the bay leaf like that. It's like a happy face. Okay? That's your onion piqué or your spiked onion. Set that aside, and then we're gonna start making your sauce. Now, to start, butter in. Low heat, you just wanna melt the butter. You don't want a lot of sizzling sounds or any harsh heat on the butter. We're gonna be making a white roux. So get your whisk and melt the butter. Then introduce the flour and whisk until everything is fully incorporated. Remember, 50% flour, 50% of your butter. That's going to be your roux. You do not want to introduce your flour into your liquid as is. You want to mix it with something else, like fat or butter. Okay, once you have your white roux ready, we're going to slowly introduce milk. Whisk, then introduce more, whisk. You don't want to add this all at the same time or else we're just going to form lumps. Oof. Slowly incorporate your milk until you have a stable sauce. This is what you don't want to happen. You see those lumps in there? You don't want that. That's why you're using a whisk. Even though you're going to strain it anyway at the end, you still want to prevent lumps from forming. It's a good practice to have your sauce with less lumps as possible. Once you have your flour or your roux incorporated into your milk, then you bring this to a simmer, but before that, you want to introduce your onion piqué. Goes in, and then just leave it to boil. Once it starts simmering, you don't want to leave the sauce alone. You want to whisk it every now and then just to make sure that nothing sticks at the bottom of the pot. Pasta dough, fully rested. It's about 45 minutes or so. We're going to divide this into, let's say, 6. So divide that into half, and then divide the half into 3. Divide the other half into 3 again. Now, you don't want to leave this uncovered. You don't want it to dry out. So your plastic sheet, put them there. It doesn't matter if they're even or not, because we're not going to be measuring the dough anyways, or the length of the dough as per gram or what. You're going to measure them by length. So your pasta dough, does that with a bit of all-purpose flour. Then you want to laminate the dough. Okay, I don't know if I have space here, but okay, stretch that about like so. Remove any excess. Then you want to fold that into 3. And flatten that again. Well, remove anything you don't want to eat. I don't know what that is. Fold it again. Then flatten it. Make it as flat as you can using the rolling pin. You don't really have to use a rolling pin. You can use your hands if you want to, or you can use a bottle, like a wine bottle, or I'm guessing you guys drink a lot of beer, so get some beer bottles. Then you want to go with your pasta machine. Now, on the pasta machine, you have a dial. Sometimes the widest is 1, sometimes the widest is 7. In this case, yeah, the widest is 1. So check your pasta machine, which one is the widest. You want to start with that. So we have 1. Then you want to pass through your pasta dough. And then gradually, you want to go tighter and tighter and tighter until you reach the thickness that you want. So go with 2. I'm going to be doing this fast, but you don't have to. 3. 4, 5, 6. I'm guessing we're gonna be reaching until 7 or 8. I think 8 is good. Now you don't want to pull the pasta dough. Let it go naturally in, and then when you can see a hint of your finger behind or beneath your pasta dough, then you know it's good to go. You don't want it too thin, you don't want it thick. So let that rest, and then we cut them onto the length of your container later. Sauce is done. Check the consistency. It's still gonna be lumpy, but it's gonna be okay. Okay, you taste before you season. Okay, it's lacking a lot of salt, so we're gonna introduce a lot of salt. So you taste, you season, then you taste again. Bit of cayenne pepper. Ooh, way too much. Remove that. Okay, clean spoons every time. Give that a good mix. Okay, then you taste again. That's a weird looking cayenne. Okay, good. Once you're done, you're going to strain this. So onto a separate vessel and onto a strainer. Okay, this will eliminate all the lumps that we have earlier. And this will ensure that you don't have any of that onions and cloves and bay leaf. Always remember 10 parts water, 1 part pasta, and make sure that you are making the water taste like the ocean. That means you need to put a lot of salt. The salt's gonna increase the temperature and it's gonna season your pasta. The pasta goes in, takes about like, for lasagna, it takes about a minute or so. You don't really have to fully cook them in water. Just wanna blanch them. Don't overcrowd your pasta water, boiling water. Take them out, then straight onto ice water, and then try to straighten up your pasta. Because once it touches ice water, that's its final shape when it's flat as possible. Once your pasta is blanched, at least cold, onto a separate container, you want to put in a bit of oil, in this case olive oil. Put in your pasta sheets, dab a bit of oil in there, making sure that your pasta or your pasta sheets, they don't stick together. A bit of oil, give that a good drizzle, good massage. Sauces are cooled down partially and your pastas are blanched. Now all you have to do now is take out the spices that they put in. If we can, I removed all the cinnamon already from your bolognese sauce. And we want to start with a very thin layer of bolognese at the bottom of your pan. You're using a food pan like this, or you're using a lasagna pan if you have it, or a casserole, it doesn't matter. This is just to help the pasta not stick at the bottom of the pan. And then you want to start layering now your pasta. Just take your pasta and then take a gauge on how much you're going to take out from your pasta. About that. And start layering your pasta. Easy enough. If you have scraps or like trimmings from your pasta, just layer them on the side. It doesn't matter because nobody's gonna see that anyway. The lasagna gods will forgive you. Then, next layer, same. Bolognese on top. The more layer you have on your pasta, the more stable it is. Now, if you're gonna serve this tomorrow, since your sauces are gonna be much more relaxed at the relaxed stage, then it's gonna be much more stable too. So bolognese and then bechamel. Your it's kind of pink, but it's all right. Then try to even out your lasagna. It's up to you if you want to put a lot or put less on the layers, but in general, I just want even amount of sauces per layer. And for me, that's good enough. I'm a bit thrifty when it comes to the sauces because I want to put more layers as I go. Okay, another sheet in there. If you have an excess, you can just take that out. And this is not your soigné type of food. It's more on homey type of dish. Yep. One more layer in there. And then you repeat. Optional, you can add in a bit of Parmesan. This will add more flavor and this will make the layers a bit more stable since your Parmesan is gonna melt and it's gonna absorb a lot of moisture. It's gonna help it more, it's gonna build a lot of, or develop a lot of structure onto your lasagna. Okay, last layer, topmost layer, the rest of your bolognese or whatever sauce you have left, bechamel bolognese, doesn't matter. If you have both, then do both. But put some on top. And again, we're gonna cover mistakes with a lot of cheese. If only you can do that in real life, dude. Okay. Before you add your cheese, try to tuck in the sides of your lasagna. Because if you have like some flaps, it's just gonna burn. Since you're gonna put this inside the oven, then it's just gonna burn. Okay, mozzarella on top. You can put as much cheese as if you want, but don't overdo it because again, at the end of the day, it's lasagna. You're not cooking just cheese, but cheese is good. We're gonna add in more Parmesan just to cover all those crevices. Then, you wanna clean the sides of your pan because you don't want that to burn. I mean, you're gonna still have some burnt spots on your pan, but you wanna, again, lessen that. Last thing you do before you put it inside the oven, you want to poke it so that the steam will come out. If you don't do this, it's just gonna bubble. It's just gonna bow out. And this goes inside the oven. Okay, lasagna is done. It's been like around 30-45 minutes. Now we've rested this for about 10 minutes. It's a good rule of thumb to serve this the day after and then just heat it up so that everything is well rested. But today we don't have the luxury of the time. So we're just gonna serve it as is. So we're just gonna portion this maybe into 9. So when you portion this, you wanna go 3, then 3. So when you portion your first cut, make sure that this part right here is going to be half of this side. Maybe that's right there. Use your not so good knife for this one because you don't want to damage your expensive or your sharp knife. And just get half of that. Then do the same thing on this side. So you get 9 portions. You want to lay down all your plates and you want to have everything at arm's reach, like a proper mise en place, so that when you pick up your food, you just go pick it up, then go food, food, food. Just so one hand on the food and then one hand on your serving utensil. Okay, that goes on top of plate. Then garnish this with some chopped parsley. And there you go. So easy as pie. That's your lasagna. Things to take note of. Your pasta dough. Always remember the recipe. You should know this by heart. That's going to be 400 grams of all-purpose flour, 100 grams of semolina flour, 3 egg yolks, and then 5 whole eggs. So that's 5, 3, 4, 1. Next, bolognese sauce, like your ordinary stew, it's gonna be searing of the meat, sauteing of your aromatics or your vegetables, adding your tomato paste, optional, deglazing with wine, reducing it, bringing back your meat, adding flour is optional as well, and then covering up with your liquid or your stock. Next is your bechamel. Again, basic formula. It's going to be roux plus milk equals bechamel, but of course you have your onion piqué as well. Always strain the bechamel before serving it. Optional seasoning for your bechamel is going to be salt, pepper, and nutmeg, or in this case, it's going to be cayenne. And that's basically it. So again, when you're boiling your pasta, 10:1 ratio, 10 parts water, 1 part pasta. Salt your water always, 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 so that it goes up, temperature shoots up, and then seasons your pasta as well. Blanch it for your lasagna, but for your ordinary pasta dishes, you don't have to. And I guess that's it. So hopefully you enjoy this very basic recipe, and hopefully you can pull it off in your own homes. Thank you.